Welcome to Art with Mr. Mason. Hello, my friends. I hope you're all doing well. Coming to you once again from my office and art studio at home. So today's project is a fun one I'm calling City Perspective. We'll be using some crayons on cardstock paper and using some interesting tools. We'll be using a compass to draw a circle. So if you're ready, let's go. All right. These are the supplies you will need. I've got a piece of cardstock. Cardstock's my go-to paper for almost all of these projects. If you wanted to, you could probably use regular printer paper, but I've got a piece of cardstock. You will need a pencil, a Sharpie is our fine point Sharpie. That's our fatter Sharpie. You will need a ruler, and you will need some crayons or colored markers, whichever you choose to do, totally up to you. You'll need a pair of scissors, a compass. These are a fun, cool tool to use. Everybody should have one of these in their art kit. If you don't have a compass, you could use like a paper plate, or if you have like a cereal bowl or something round, we're going to need to draw a circle. Okay, so first thing I want to do is I want to draw my circle in there. As I said, you could use a paper plate, you could use a bowl. I'm going to use my compass here, but I want to find the center first. So I'm going to take my ruler. The easiest way to do that is to go diagonal corners, right? Corner to corner. Draw a little line very lightly. One little line, and then go the other side like so. Corner to corner, and then draw a little line. And now I have an X, and that's going to be the center of my paper. Another way you do it is you can take your ruler and you can measure the width. So this is 11 inches, so it would be 5.5. So if I take my ruler, so there's 5.5 and right dead center. And same way here, this is 8.5, so that's going to be 4.25. So that's another way you can measure. But doing the diagonal corners is probably the easiest way to do it. All right, so I've got my center of my paper, and now I want to take my compass. Compasses are really fun to use, easy to use. Everybody should have one of these in their art kit. So you've got a little pointed end on one side and you got pencil on the other, and they're adjustable. So you can adjust the width of what it is, the circle you want to make. All right. So what I'm going to do is I got my X right there in the middle, is I'm going to peg this right there, just like that. And then I'm going to adjust the radius of my compass to just a hair under the top of the paper, right? So I want to put a little pressure down here, and I'm going to put the pencil down, and I'm going to kind of tilt it to one side. It's just a little easier to drag, because I'm making sure I keep pressure here on the center, and then I'm going to go all the way around, nice and slow. I'm doing it nice and slow in one motion. All right, so there is my circle, and this is going to be the area that we're going to draw our city perspective in. And we have a center now, the center of the circle. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm going to start drawing some of these buildings, and what I want to do is I want to kind of rough them in with my ruler. Now we're gonna, the perspective view on this is that we are we're somebody in a big city like New York or downtown LA or somewhere. We've got some skyscrapers, and we are looking straight up, and our perspective, things are wide as they're closer, and as they get further away, they narrow, right? So that's where our center comes in. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to line my ruler up to that center line. And I'm going to draw, I wanted to draw these lightly. I don't want to press really hard. I want light lines. All right, so I'm going to draw this first building. And if it goes off the edge outside the circle, that's fine, because we're going to end up cutting this out afterwards. All right, so there's one line. I'm going to go ahead and shift my ruler over. And I'm going to draw a line here. So I've got this sort of pizza wedge, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and connect that together. So now I have a building. I have a skyscraper. And I want to add some like windows or floors to this. And as, you know, I start here, and as I move further out, I want that space to get a little wider. You could use your ruler for this if you wanted, you know, to kind of measure it out. But I kind of like sort of the freehand idea of working. So there you go. That's our first building. I'm not going to worry about all the details of like windows or roofs or anything like that. I'm just going to keep it. I'm going to go all the way around and draw a bunch of these little buildings. Let's put one. Let's put another one here. So each time I draw a building, I want to line it up to that center, and I'm going to make them all different sizes. So this one's going to go here, and then maybe it's going to go this way, and then maybe there's a little stack here that kind of goes up, right? And then I'll do another stack here, and then over, and then maybe we'll put a little top on it like this. There we go. And then maybe I could put some windows just like this. And maybe there's, as we get lower, maybe there's bigger windows. So I'm not basing these on any sort of real buildings. I'm just kind of making it up. Just like that. And I'm doing these little windows. They have a little perspective to them as well. Again, you can go ahead and use your ruler. You know, everything goes to that center square or that center X. And actually, I freehanded those windows, and their perspective matches really good. All right. So let's do one more building. Now you can tight these buildings, you know, right up against each other, or if you want, you could put a little space in between. So this one, I think I'm going to put a little space. I want to do like a really long, skinny building that almost goes all the way to the center. So I'm going to go there, and then again, line it up with the X, and then go here, and then let's put a top on it, just like that. Right? And let's put a little, maybe this is a really fancy building. So I'm going to put these sort of stripes on it. And see how they're tight at the top, and as they get lower, this perspective changes, so they get wider. Okay? There we go. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to do these really quick, and I'm going to speed the video up. But you get the idea. All right, so let's go ahead and speed up the video. there's our pencil sketch of our city, our city perspective. Now what you want to do is take your Sharpie, and you could use the ruler and retrace them. I'm just going to go ahead and just freehand all the tracing. I always like to. I always like the look of a more freehand drawing. I think it just, I use the word organic a lot when I talk about some of our art projects. When I say organic, I mean it doesn't look mechanical. It looks a little more, natural, like you just drew it with your hand, and I think that gives any artwork a certain charm when it's something that you've drawn by hand. There's a time and a place to use a ruler, and digital art is very popular and things like that. But I think doing these projects, I find it sort of freeing, and I just love just drawing and using a pencil and a Sharpie or a crayon or a marker or whatever it is that you choose to do. Do it, whatever makes you happy. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just start tracing all of these buildings that I drew, and I could, as I go along, if I feel like I want to add, a little extra something here and there as I go along that I didn't put in my pencil, I might do that. Maybe you can add some extra windows or something like that. So I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and speed the video up. You don't need to see me trace all this. You get the idea. So let's go ahead and speed up the video. All right, so there we go. There's our Sharpie. We traced all our pencil lines. As I said, you could have used your ruler to do the retraces, but like I said, I like the sort of organic feel of a hand-drawn line. All right, so now you're at a point where you can color this in. Before we do that, there's our circle that goes all the way around. You don't have to trace this, but I'm going to go ahead and trace it anyway, but just so I can see my line a little better. I'm going to go ahead and rotate my artwork around. You don't have to trace this if you don't want to. It's just going to help us when we go to cut this out. And my lines that went on the outside, I'm not going to worry about those because we're going to end up, when we're done with this, we're going to cut this out. All right, so you have the option, you can use some crayons or you can use colored markers. I kind of want sort of a softer look to this. So I think I'm going to use my crayons. But before I start coloring it in, I've got this X in the middle of my paper. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my eraser and erase that X in the sky in my city perspective. Just like that. All right. So that's by gum eraser. So you can use your eraser on your pencil, or if you have like a standard pink eraser, you can use that. What I need to do is kind of decide my color scheme. I think I want to do something that looks sort of rainbow colors for all my buildings and maybe a night sky. I kind of like the idea that this might be a night sky. So I think what I'm going to do first is just start coloring the buildings. And I want, like I said, I want to do kind of a rainbow pattern. I want each one of the buildings to be kind of a different color. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to start with yellow. So maybe I'm going to do this group of buildings here in yellow. So I'm just going to lay down a nice little soft yellow. Again, I'm not going to worry about going outside the lines. Just like that. If I kind of go over on the outside, that's all right. Because I'm going to go in and do my night sky. So I want to keep my buildings kind of simple. And, you know, as I did with my pencil and then with the Sharpie, I kept them very simple. So let's do this grouping of buildings here. Let's do these guys in yellow. Just like that. So I'm doing kind of a light coloring, so I'm actually kind of seeing some of that paper underneath and the white paper showing through, and that's fine. All right, so I'm going to take my yellow. I'm going to actually put these to the side. When I'm using crayons or markers, I'll just set them aside because I may come back to these later. All right, so going through the rainbow, let's do some orange over here. So I've got an orange marker or orange crayon, so I'm going to go ahead and do orange on this building, and our Sharpie shows through really nicely under the crayon, which is great. Right, so there's a little orange. So we're transitioning, we're doing kind of rainbow colors. So we're going yellow, orange, and then our next color would be what, like a red. Okay, so I got a red. So let's do this building here. Let's do this one in red. And I'm kind of coloring in the direction of the building. So if I see my lines, usually, you know, with a darker, as our colors get darker, you know, the red is kind of a darker color. You know, we're going to kind of see our lines a little bit. So if I'm kind of just going all over the place, we're going to see that. So let's go ahead, let's do another. This will be another red building here, like this. So I'm just laying like base coat, right? Just solid colors on. What I want to do is I'm going to go back in with different variations of red and yellows and oranges and do a little gradient. All right, so let's go ahead and maybe do, what would be like a transition color? Would we see like purple maybe? So I've got I've got a little cup of colors here. So let's go ahead, let's do like a purple. Maybe let's do it kind of light. I don't want to push too hard. So let's do a little purple here on this one, like that. All right, so we're gonna go kind of yellow, orange, red, kind of purple. We'll go into like maybe like a darker blue and the light blue, and then green. Right, these will be green, and these are the light blue. Right, there we go. So let's do one more purple. I like this purple. Let's go ahead and do this one in purple. And again, I'm doing it kind of lightly. I'm not going really heavy because I am going to go back with a different color and kind of darken those in. All right, so let's do a blue. This one looks pretty good. Let's see how that looks. I'm going to go ahead and rotate my artwork here. Yeah, I like this blue. That's a nice blue. We'll do this building in blue. Again, I'm not worried about going outside the lines. So let's do another one here. Let's do this one in blue. So we got these two kind of light blues, like that. All right, let's find a darker blue. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and rotate again. That's pretty much the same color. Let's go ahead. I want a darker blue. Let's see what I have in my bin here. Let's see. Yep, that's almost the same color. I got a lot of the same color of blue. Here we go. This one will work. All right, that's good. All right, so go ahead and do a little of that blue over the top, just like that. All right, see how our colors are kind of transitioning around? All right, let's find us a green. And that looks pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and rotate my artwork. So let's do this green. This is pretty light green. I definitely want a darker green, but that looks good against the yellow, so that'll work. Right, so we got that sort of transition-y green. So let's get a darker green to do this building right here. So one thing I haven't done that I probably should is I have a scratch piece of paper to test your colors before you commit. So that would have been a good idea to test my colors first before I committed, but you know, this is all the fun here. All right, so there we go. So I've got all of my colors there, and I have these are all the colors I've been using. So if I want to go back, I go, what color was that? So I have them all handy, right? So now what I want to do is these are all pretty flat as far as their color. So now I want to go in and maybe add a little extra like pop. So let's see, for example, like this red. If I grab like another kind of an orangey color and maybe just sort of down at the bottom, I put a little darker color here, right? And have it kind of transition up to this red. So down at the bottom, it's a little darker, just like this. So I'm pressing a little harder. You know, as always, when we're using our crayons, you don't want to hold it like this in color because you'll snap it. So I always kind of grip it so that my finger is kind of supporting the crayon, right? And that way I can put a little extra pressure on it and not worry about it breaking on me. So you see how we get a little gradual transition, which I think, you know, kind of enhances the color we've already done. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit more here. And I'm kind of going around these windows. I don't want to color the windows with this new color. That way they kind of stick out a little bit. The windows kind of pop. There we go. So see how we kind of gradual transition? All right, so let's go ahead and go all the way around. You get the idea. I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and, you know, I'm going to color these and do the little gradients, and we'll go ahead and speed up the video. Okay, so I have colored in all of my buildings. I did that sort of rainbow pattern and did a little gradient, darker values of like the blues, the purples, the reds, greens, etc., etc. So for the most part, I'm done with all those colors, so I can go ahead and move my crayons to one side. So now I have a choice. I can do a daytime sky and do like a light blue, but I think I really want these buildings to kind of pop out a little more. And I think I'm going to do a night sky. And I think what I'll do is I want to add maybe some stars in there. And I'm just going to take my Sharpie. I'm going to draw a bunch of circles like this. Another way to do this is just to go ahead and color it. And then you could take like a little bit of white out or a little dab of acrylic white paint and add in the stars that way when it's all done. But I'm going to go ahead and just keeping with my Sharpie kind of motif. And again, I'm going to do like I did with our buildings is I'm going to go ahead and do gradients. But what I want to do first is I want to lay in sort of a blue value for this nighttime sky, and I'm going to go around all of the little stars first. Just color around those stars. That way I don't color over them. And if I do color over them, that's all right. That's fine. I'll still be able to see the Sharpie through, and that'll show up. But I'm going to go ahead and just color around those, and then I'm going to do a little blue value sort of in the center here. If you wanted to, you could do purple, you could do darker blue. So I've got this sort of medium blue value here, right? So I just kind of laid that in. And then I want to take my black crayon and bring in the blacks. And I'm going to start over here and bring my blacks from the edge in between the buildings, right? And I'm not going to worry again about making it absolutely perfectly covered. We can see a lot of the white paper showing through, and that gives a good contrast to the colors, so we get to see all those different values of color. Again, I'm not going to worry about coloring it in completely. If some of the white paper shows through, that's perfectly fine. I like that. That's kind of what I want. So I'm kind of hugging against the buildings here with the black, and I want a little lighter area in the center. So like we did with our buildings where it's kind of darker down at the bottoms, the edges, outside edges are going to be darker, and as we come up to the center, we're going to see that value change, and so we'll see some of that blue showing through. So we're going to hug the black against the buildings here, and then kind of keeping my mind or my eyes open for my stars. So I'm going to leave the center for now. I'm going to get all these edges first with the black for my night sky. And again, I'm holding my crayon like this so that I choke up on it so that it doesn't break on me. All right, so let's go ahead and get all this. So as I'm going, I'm rotating my paper to where it's the easiest to get into certain corners. Normally during these videos, I will keep my picture vertical up and down so you guys can see it really good. But I think, we've done enough of these to where you know how all these things work. So, all right, so now I've got all my black coming in, and now I can start sort of lightly adding the black to the center. And I'm using kind of a swirly pattern. I'm going around and around and around like this, going around those stars, because I want the center to be not so dark. So I want it dark on the edges. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to put a little extra pressure down here on these far outside edges so that that black really sticks out around the buildings, and it's going to make those buildings with their color kind of pop a little more. So see how that black really kind of brings out those buildings. So I'm just putting a little extra pressure on the black areas here at the outside edges. That's the darker transition, the gradient is just on the outside edges. So I can bring that in a little darker all around the buildings here. And then again, how much you do, how dark you want it is kind of up to you. It's your preference. But just around the edges of the building, if I add a little bit more of that black in there, it's just going to make the edges of those buildings kind of pop out a little more. It may just make them stand out. There we go. I'm liking this. That way the center of our picture here has a little more of that blue in there for that nighttime sky. There we go. All right, that looks pretty good. I like it. So as you know, you transition those colors. If you wanted to, you can add a little more blue in there. So if I just take a little bit of blue and just kind of rake that in the center. There's a different kind of blue. This is actually, what color is this? Like a marine blue. There we go. So I did color over some of my stars, which is fine. I can still see those dots, and it still tells me that those are stars. All right, so pretty happy with how this came out. Our last step is to cut it out. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and take my Sharpie, and normally I don't want to draw Sharpie over crayon because the wax from the crayon tends to rub off on the Sharpie. But I just did a little bit, so keep that in mind. If you want to sign it, maybe sign it before you color. All right, so coloring's all done. Trusty scissors. Always be aware of the points of your scissors. I'm going to go ahead and start on the edge here now. You know, the trick to cutting is nice and slow, and I'm not going to cut and move my hand around. I'm going to rotate the paper. All right, so I'm going to grab, and I'm just cutting. My scissors are pointed straight away from me, and as I cut and saw through the paper, I'm rotating with my left hand. I'm right-handed. That's my dominant hand, so you might use a left hand. If you're left-handed, you just do the opposite. All right, so I went ahead and just cut that little piece off so it's a little easier to work with. And I'm going to go all the way around and cut that off. Scissors to the side, scraps over there. And there we go. There is our city perspective. So you can rotate that around. So it looks like we're laying on our backs in the middle of New York City, looking up at the night sky. There we go. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this project. I had fun with my city perspective. I had a lot of fun working with the compass. So if you don't have one of those in your art kit, you might want to look into getting one of those. All right, well, I hope you had fun with this, and we will see you next time.